Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to part 2 of the DCS Fw190 D-9 tutorial series. So in this episode I will be demonstrating for you guys the taxi and the takeoff portion of the tutorial. So let's get started. So now that we have our Fw190 started, the engine is warmed up. This button here, this dial, turns on your instrument lights. It's just a little bit better. It makes it more readable for me. So just turn on the instrument lights. I'm gonna make sure my oxygen is on. Yes, it's on. And as I mentioned in the previous video, you'll have the 4 different channels for your radio. Now normally, originally the Fw190 pilots in the Luftwaffe used channel 2, I believe, for ATC. So we're gonna keep with that tradition and use channel 2 for ATC. So let's ask permission to taxi.
Cobble Eddy, in field 1-1. Request taxi to runway.
Any day now. There we go.
Clear to taxi to runway 7.
Roger that. Now one thing that is really critical during taxi is that you open your radiator cooling doors. The cowling flaps, I think is what they call. So it's really difficult to see in the D9. It's right here. If you hover your mouse over it, it says radiator flap controls. You want to, if you can, I'm not sure if you guys can see it, but you want to rotate that clockwise to open. So you want the radiator flap doors to be all the way open, so all the way to the right, clockwise. You want to turn them clockwise, and if you want to close them, you turn it anti-clockwise. So let's have them open all the way. So now that's open. We are good to go. We are good to taxi, and we have permission. We are good to go. Okay, now in the manual, in the DCS Fw190 manual, it says to push the stick forward 3 centimeters to unlock the tail wheel. I don't recommend you do that during taxi a lot, because the plane becomes almost uncontrollable. It will swerve left and right. So what I recommend you do is you hold the stick back aft to keep that tail wheel locked and just use differential braking. However, you can push the stick forward if you want to make tight turns, slow tight turns. Now let's go ahead and taxi. As I said before, it's quite difficult to taxi in the Focke-Wulf. So let's begin. I'm using differential braking. I have the stick all the way back. As I said, you can push the stick forward and make it easier, allowing the rear tail wheel to swivel, but it will be really difficult to control the aircraft. You have to immediately pull the stick back after you perform the turn. So again, just like the P-51 Mustang, we have 0 visibility in front of us. So again, S-turning would be really useful. However, that is quite difficult in the Focke-Wulf because our rudder doesn't have much authority at lower speeds, so we have to do differential braking to perform these S-turns. So there's a turn coming up. So I can demonstrate the tail wheel unlocking for you guys. So I'll now push the stick all the way forward, and the tail wheel is unlocked now. And the plane just becomes uncontrollable. So immediately after you make your turn, you want to pull the stick back, and you want to give braking to the opposite direction that you're turning to straighten up the wheel. So once you finish your turn, you got to do that. You got to pull back the stick, and you have to brake in the opposite direction that you were turning to straighten out the wheel. But then again, these are my, like, the way that I do it. I taxi in the Focke-Wulf. There might be better ways. So let's hold short. Now one good thing about the Focke-Wulf compared to the Mustang is that you can use the full brakes of the Focke-Wulf, and the plane has little or no tendency to tip forward, to nose down forward. So you can use your brakes in the Focke-Wulf quite aggressively. At least I have had no issues with the aircraft tipping forward. So let's ask permission to take off.
Cobble Eddy, in field 1-1, request takeoff. Enfield 1-1, Cobble Eddy, you are cleared for takeoff when ready. Climb 300 at QFE 29.87.
Okay, thank you. So, doing a final check. Make sure that nobody's landing. So again, I'm pushing the stick forward now, and you can see immediately the aircraft turns. So I'm now holding the stick back, and I just tap the brakes in the opposite direction to straighten out the wheel. Now once you line up on the runway, it is recommended that you continue moving forward for a little while to make sure that your tail wheel is nice and straight. Just decrease the throttle and holding the brakes. There we go. And now we're in the most difficult part of the tutorial, and that is takeoff. Takeoff in the Focke-Wulf is extremely difficult. Now it has been extremely difficult for me. I'm not sure if it's difficult for others. I've talked to some other people as well, and they're having trouble taking off as well. So it is a difficult thing. And the one reason for that is that when comparing it to the Mustang has rudder trim, but the Focke-Wulf does not. So anyways, let's begin our pre-takeoff checklist. So one thing we want to do is we want to recage and then uncage our artificial horizon. Then we want to make sure our fuel selector valve is all the way on the top to ALF. Make sure our fuel pump circuit breakers are in. Oxygen is on. Cowling flaps are all the way open. All the instruments are in the green. Now over here, this is your elevator trim control. You want to make sure that that is in 0. So that has to be in 0 elevator trim. And that is the control for the trim. You can just map that to your HOTAS. So move that up to 0. There we go. Okay, now we want to make sure that our flaps are in the start position. Start in German, as you might have remembered in the previous video. Start is takeoff in German. So we have that in start, and we can confirm that it is in takeoff by looking at this this gauge here. So we can see it's in takeoff position. And the other wing as well. Okay, so everything is good to go. Now one last thing. If you guys are carrying wing tanks, so if you're carrying wing tanks, it is recommended, that's what it says in the manual, it is recommended that you only turn on the auxiliary, so the wing tank pumps and the aft pump, and turn off the front pump. That is what the manual says if you're carrying wing tanks. And also here, for the normal takeoff, you want to leave this fuel gauge selector to Vorn, so the front tank. And obviously if you're carrying wing tanks, you will keep it in the Hinton first. Okay, now takeoff is, as I said, is extremely difficult. Now I'll just go through with you guys how I do it. So what I do is I will pull back the stick aft about half or slightly more than half, and then I'll give almost half right stick, so aft half, and then right half stick, so that's that. And then I will try and give half right rudder as well, and then I'll go full power. Now when you go full power, when your aircraft starts speeding up, what I normally tend to do is that I will reduce the right rudder. I will reduce the right rudder because the aircraft, as soon as it picks up speed, it will gain rudder authority, and it will overcome the engine torque. So what you want to do is you want to reduce the right rudder slightly as you're gaining speed. When I reach the speed of about 150 and above, what I will do is I will reduce the right rudder, but not all the way. I still want to have some right rudder. And what I do is I will slightly move the stick forward. I'll still keep it in the right, but I'll slightly move it forward, and the aircraft will begin to take off. So let's see if I can do it. Let's see if I can pull it off. Full power. There we go. Take off. Beautiful. Gears up. Flaps up. And off we go. So the most optimal climbing speed for the Fw 190 D-9 is between 280 kilometers to 290 kilometers an hour at an engine RPM at around 3,200 RPM, so basically almost full power. And after you perform your takeoff, it is important to have a look at your instruments and instrument gauges for the various different engine settings. And it's important to keep your engine coolant temperature in the acceptable range. Now, in the Mustang, the engine coolant temperature is regulated automatically by the aircraft. But in the Fw, that's something that you control using the cooling flaps on the radiator. In takeoff, the coolant temperature can be allowed to reach 120 degrees. In normal cruise, it should be no more than 100 degrees. In climbing, it can be allowed to reach 110 degrees as well. So as I said in the beginning, the cooling flap rotor is right here. The control for it is located right here. You turn it clockwise to open it, and anti-clockwise to turn it off, to close it, basically. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching part 2 of the DCS Fw 190 D9 tutorial. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Until then, bye bye.